Well, it's June 21st, 2016. We got a pretty bad thunderstorm coming in. That's not the topic of this video. See, recently I decided to get a little adventurous and drive out to a thrift store a little further out than I normally go. And let's just say it was well worth it. Because I got this. Some of you may already know what this is by looking at it. Those of you who don't, it is a Nakamichi LX-3 cassette deck. I have been wanting a Nakamichi cassette deck for years, but I've never been able to find one at a price I could afford. And even this one, they somewhat knew what it was worth. But not quite. And coupled with the fact that I had 25% off that day as a member of that store's rewards club, yeah, let's just say that was a no-brainer for me. Let me go ahead and put this light on here so you can see things a little better, although it's a little bright. You can see I got it open because I've just finished doing repairs on it. And I figured I'd show you what it is I did because I had to get a little clever in this one. First, figured I'd give you a quick overview of the front panel here. Power and eject buttons are interesting. They kind of blend in here. The power button's spring-loaded, so it doesn't kind of stay pushed in when you turn it on. We got a digital 4-digit tape counter, LED meters, Dolby indicators, and a record mute indicator. Just lights up whenever you have the record mute button pressed. I think it also lights up in record pause mode. I'm not sure about that. Got your usual transport controls down here with LEDs next to them all. Wonder if there were extra buttons on a different model that went here. Maybe the LX-5, I'm not sure. Then there's this. This self-proclaimed master fader. It's a very clever feature. What this does is this actually lets you fade in and out fade the audio in and out while you're recording. So that's definitely very interesting. I might have to see, maybe I'll find some clever use for that. And under here you press this and you get all kinds of extra controls, and it looks like I did not put the knobs back in after I put the front panel back on. They're sitting right there, so I'll have to do that in a second. So we got tape selector, manual tape selector. I would assume I have to figure out which is which here. I would assume this is supposed to be normal, chrome, and metal in that order. But I have to figure out exactly what these, I'm sure, correspond to Nakamichi's trademark names for those. We have EQ selection separately from that. I'm assuming this only does bias then. I guess the metal mode would then be for to deal with metal tapes. Let's deal with the what's it called? The increased erase head capability that metal tapes. I'm completely. I am probably not explaining that very well. Either way, I think you get what I mean. Got Dolby B&C noise reduction selectable here. Separate left and right record level knobs if they were in there. Switchable MPX filter for the Dolby function. This lets you, on crappier FM tuners that don't filter out the FM stereo pilot tone, this lets you switch in a filter that does that for you so it doesn't throw the Dolby off. Got timer record and play, like many cassette decks had at the time. Memory, which I'm sure is just a zero return function. And then bias fine-tuning, which is always fun. So, that's what's in there. And then, of course, on the back, if you can see it, this is going to be a bit tricky. On the back, power cord goes in there, you got all the labeling, audio jacks over there, and then over here you got this curious little remote connector. It looks like it's an 8-pin DIN connector. I'll have to figure out what the pin out of that is, because I could have some fun with that. Okay, but either way, So what I had to do to get this thing working was, well, not a whole lot, frankly. When I got it home, it actually, unlike most of the cassette decks I've bought recently, it actually pretty much worked right out of the box. The only real issue it had was that it was running too fast. And technically, it also couldn't engage the recording function because the mode selection mechanism would get jammed due to the mode belt being worn out. But I wasn't attempting to record at the time, so that kind of went on to the back burner for a little bit. The big thing I wanted to fix was the speed issue. Now, in the process of trying to diagnose this, I knew I had to get the mode belt done, and then the counter belt, which is located behind the front panel here, it's covered up now, was also fairly loose. So I figured, okay, I'll just order a set of belts for this thing. Maybe that'll sort things out. Maybe the drive belt's gotten loose, and that's what's making it run fast, or whatever. So I ordered those, and I put the new belts in, but then found that once I put the new drive belt in, it was running too slow. So I'm like, okay, so now what's going on? So I put that in, it was running too slow. I go to try to adjust the speed. I'm thinking maybe the adjustment slipped. And I just cannot get, man, there's a lot of thunder back there. The speed just kept slipping. It just wouldn't quite hold speed. It was just, I couldn't get it to stay spot on. So I'm trying to figure out, well, okay, so what else could be going on? Could the motor be bad? Could, something need to be lubricated maybe? So in the process, somewhere along the line, I noticed that this unit had a Mabuchi branded motor in it. Let's see if I can find it here. Yep. It's a Mabuchi motor. And these things are known for having, for developing something known as Mabuchi any-speed syndrome, as some might call it. What happens is, you turn the thing on, start a tape playing, and you whack the side of the motor with a screwdriver, and the speed wanders all over the place. And that is exactly what this thing did. So I needed to find a new motor for this thing. Now, I probably could have broken down and purchased, a replacement motor somewhere. I think there's somebody I believe on tapeheads.net who is selling universal replacement capstan motors. So I could have gone that route, but I'm a bit of a cheapskate. I, of course, felt the need to try and do it using parts I had lying around. So I pulled this out, and I realized that I had, somewhere buried in the closet, an old Sharp RT1144 cassette deck that I had relegated to parts duty because, well, it was a piece of junk. So, now I took that one out, and I'm looking at it, trying to see if I can get the motor out of it, and I realize, oh, wait a second. The motor in that one turns the opposite direction. Because the motor, here, I'll show you in here, this one, the motor is mounted here, and then you can't really see, let me see if I can grab a flashlight here. And that wiring job was not that bad when I got it. It was all tied down originally. I just had to cut the cable ties loose to get the front panel out. And I just haven't bothered putting it back yet. But in there, you'll see there's a belt going across two flywheels, because this is a dual capstan unit. And then the motor in here must turn counterclockwise to get that to turn in the right direction. Well, in the Sharp unit, the motor was configured so it was mounted like that, kind of flipped around. Flipped 180 degrees from the way this one's mounted. So in that situation, the motor had to turn the opposite direction. Now, one might think, this being a DC motor, that, well, you just be able to flip the direction by flipping the polarity. Well, it's not quite that easy on these things, because this is not simply a DC motor. This is a DC motor with a speed controller built onto the back of it. You can see the circuit board here. This little PCB protruding from here is actually part of a larger one that covers this back part of the motor here. And that speed controller is polarity sensitive. So you can't just reverse the polarity on it. What you in fact have to do is reverse the polarity on the underlying motor with respect to the output of that speed controller. Which is always fun because that means you have to take the motor apart. Or at least somewhat. In this case, with this motor, it was really easy. All you had to do was undo this screw here, and then this back part came off. There was a little dust cover in there that came out, and the board and the motor just kind of came out, and the motor had its own housing on it, so it was real easy to deal with. Then after that, it was a simple matter of just desoldering the motor from the board and soldering it back on the other direction, because the prongs on the motor, the contacts on the motor were designed to be symmetrical so that you could do something like that. So I made the modification, put it all back together, put the motor in here, and after a little fiddling to make sure I put everything back together right, it works. I got the speed stable, it's running at the right speed now, and interestingly, I actually realized I actually put the original belt back in here, because it turned out the belt I got seems to actually be too small. So, which was the other reason it was running too slow. So, the original belt seems to be in okay shape, unlike the other two belts. So I'm going to leave the original one in there for right now, and maybe see if I can exchange the other belt for the correct one and put it in when that one inevitably fails. But either way, I've talked for long enough. I think it's about time I give you all a demonstration of this. So we'll go ahead and pop a cassette in here, try to hope it's a better one. This machine's interesting when you put the cassette in, it actually winds it forward slightly, I think to deal with slack issues and things like that. Let's turn on these Altic Lansing computer speakers here, and ideally we'd had hooked this up to something a lot nicer than this, but haven't gotten there quite yet. So we'll go ahead and hit play, and we'll see what we get here. Shut that off before I get in trouble. But yeah, I think you'll all agree that sounds pretty darn good for a cassette deck. I have to say this is definitely by far the best sounding cassette deck I own now. So I'm definitely glad I bought this thing, and I will hopefully soon put it to good use as soon as I get it put back together the rest of the way. Oh, the counter does count into the negative, interestingly. It turns into 3 digits when you do that. It's a clever little feature. But yeah, so that is my most recent thrift store acquisition, and quite an amazing one at that. So thanks for watching, and hopefully there will be more stuff coming soon. I might even, if I get this set up on my stereo in here, I might do another video with it connected to a real speaker system. But yeah, for now, that will be it. And thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more right here on If You Like Good Ideas.